Okay, so we are in the book, we're on page 3. And this is from a Mamar in Tzemach Tzedek. And up until this point, he explained the idea that there are 5 kinds of nisyonos, 5 kinds of tests. In this booklet, look all the way in the back, on the last page. You have a summary of everything in this Mamar. So there you have the 5 categories. One is how strong we are to resist temptation, meaning not to do an avera. The second one is how far we'll go to observe a mitzvah. The third one is how will we be towards Hashem when He gives us suffering. And the fourth, how will we be towards Hashem when He gives us a lot of good. And the fifth one is what we're talking about now, how strong we are when our emunah is challenged. We're not talking about suffering in a physical sense. We're talking about something happens which challenges our belief in Hashem, challenges our trust in Hashem, that Hashem is truth, that Hashem is just, and what it says in Torah is true. These kind of questions, that's the 5th kind of test. So, what he explained up until this point was how a test brings a person to become at a higher level. How's that? So he explained that a test in the science is something which was created by Hashem. So it must have Hashem's energy and light in it, otherwise it couldn't exist. But naturally, that energy of Hashem is hidden completely. It's as if it doesn't exist. And the reason is because in the science is not godly, it's the opposite of godliness. It goes against Hashem. But based on the principle that we learn, that something which is very low comes from a source which is very high. And therefore, the godly spark in the Nisayan actually comes from a very high source. But the problem is, it's nice that it comes from a high source, but right now it's totally concealed, it's hidden, it's inactive, it's ineffective, it's in a sense worthless because it's not revealed at all. Like the mashal we gave yesterday, that if you have 2 people in a room, one is a young person who has very little knowledge, very little talent, nothing special. Sale, you can so when I pass the test and I've overcome the test in a positive way, I reveal the godly spark in the test. When I reveal that godly spark, being that it's from a very high level, I absorb something that's really from a very high level. That gives me strength to reach a higher level of serving Hashem. Okay, you have to chew it over, but that's the general idea. So now, we're going to have to skip a few lines here and there, for some things a little bit more like Kabbalistic, but I'll show you where we'll go. Right now, we're starting on page 3, 2, 4, 6 lines from the bottom. The first word on the line is Gimel Chav. We're going to start with the word V'hine. Hine, they had a soyin, through and the soyin is barrer, the Yetzer HaTeva Muslim. The hidden good that's hidden in this Nisayan comes out in a revealed way. What comes out? The spark of godliness, Shenafal Me'olam HaToyu. The spark of godliness that fell inside this Nisayan comes from a very high source from the world that's called Olam HaToyu. Shenafal Lamata, it fell in a very low place. The Dover Hamastiv was something that hides godliness, that opposes godliness. Shememenu Nisayan, that's where the Nisayan comes. K'may Nebuchadnezzar, Lechanani Meshov Azariah, like Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, that he tormented and tortured. Chanani Meshov Azariah, they were threatened and they actually were thrown into a fire because they didn't want to violate the laws of kashrus. So there's a godly spark in that whole event, and that godly spark became elevated when they passed the test. So by doing this, we're elevating the spark of godliness that's in Gimel Klipas Atmeis higher than Klipas Neighbor. So, being that this is Chassidus level 2, I'm assuming you all know the difference between Sholosh Klipas Atmeis and Klipas Neighbor, which means everything in the world which is not godly is Klipa. This table is Klipa. This apple is Klipa. It's one of the most annoying things when you start learning Chassidus, and I don't understand, why is an apple Klipa? An apple? Who's the apple bothering? Nice innocent apple, red, and it tastes very good. It looks very nice. You can put it on the table for the school teacher. What's wrong with an apple? What's wrong with a desk? What's wrong with a clip? Why are we calling this klipper? And we explained that in Chassidus, the definition of klipper is not the way people define it without Chassidus. Without Chassidus, it's evil, doing something bad, like killing someone, stealing someone, beating someone, all these kind of negative things. In Chassidus, anything which is not revealed godliness is klipper. In fact, the word klipper doesn't even mean bad. The word klipper in Hebrew means a cover, something which covers and hides godliness. So the difference between sholosh klippas atmeus and klippas naga is klippas naga are things that are not prohibited, like a table and a chair and an apple. It's permissible. It just doesn't reveal godliness. When you talk about a Sefer Torah, it reveals godliness. Tefillin reveals godliness. A mezuzah reveals godliness. Lulav and Esrog, these things reveal godliness because it's designed the way Hashem wants. But a table, a chair, the floor, the walls, the ceiling, the lights, they don't reveal godliness, but they don't conceal God. But they don't go against godliness. So this has in it a spark of godliness, but it's not so low. The spark of godliness that's invested in sholosh klippas atmeis, things that are treif, things that are asur, it comes from a higher source. And when you do tshuva, you're able to elevate that. And in this case, where does the spark of godliness come from when it's in a nisayon? So being that a nisayon isn't just pyro, it's not just neutral. Nisayon is something which goes against Hashem. So the spark of godliness is like the same spark that's in Gimel Klipas Atmei. It's very low. These human based on this will understand. Mamar Azal, what our sages say, so we mentioned yesterday, there's a story in Gemara with Harugei Lud. I showed it to you in the booklet, it's on page 38. That the Roman emperor's daughter was murdered, and they accused the Jews, and they said if they don't produce who the murderer is, then he's going to murder all the Jews. So two brothers, who were of course totally innocent, they came forth and they said they did it. And they were killed, they were executed. But by them being executed, the rest of the community, their lives were saved. So the Gemara says that they reached such a reward in the world, in Gan Eden, Ein kol beria yechayla lamad v'chitzasam. Where they are is such a bright place spiritually that nobody could stand in their place. Mashma, from these words, it's mashma that not only tzaddikim can't be there, even Baalei Tshuva can't be there. The Baal Tshuva gedolim tzaddikim. We know that Baal Tshuva is higher than the tzaddik. But here it says nobody can stand in the place, which means not even a Baal Tshuva. What's the point? Why is it? How could a person of Baal Tshuva be higher than a tzaddik? Tzaddik is a person that never did an avera. Baal Tshuva is someone that did an avera. He did tshuva. So it's very nice that he did tshuva, but how could you say that he's higher than a tzaddik? And not only that, actually the expression goes, the place where Baal Tshuva stands, the tzaddik can't even stand there. So the explanation to this, according to Chassidus, is there's many explanations, and they're all interconnected. But what it says in Chassidus is, when a Baal Tshuva does tshuva properly, the godly spark in the averas that he did become elevated. And those godly sparks are so much higher than the godly spark in tefillin, in mezuzah, in kosher, in matzah. And therefore, they're able to reach a much higher level. But here it says that these people were even higher than the Baal Tshuva. Why? Because they went through a nisayon. And a nisayon is lower than things that are not kosher. And therefore, when it's elevated, you're higher than even a person who did tshuva.
So how practice when
Say it again.
like how it happens when it sparks from the laws from unkosher become like
Elevated. Yes, but how does that happen? It can become elevated no matter what you do. The person will eat food that's not kosher and eat it l'shem shamayim and make a bracha before, make a bracha after, and use every ounce of energy to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. It does not become elevated because it's straight. You can't elevate it. You can't do anything. You can have all the Kabbalah when you eat it, still won't be elevated. Only one thing that can elevate it, tshuva. The person does tshuva at a certain level, that tshuva is able to elevate. And what does elevate mean? That the godly spark that's buried in this thing that's straight, which comes from a very high place, it becomes revealed.
even if it works.
Right, even though it was in the past. But when I do tshuva, that spark becomes revealed. And being that that spark is from such a high level, then therefore the person becomes at a much higher level now, because we're able to take in that spark. We touched a little bit on this, if you remember, maybe in Tishrei time when we were learning, preparing for Yom Kippur, I mentioned to you that this would mean that the fact that I did an Avera actually helped me reach a higher level of serving Hashem. That's how you elevate that spark. I gave the example of a professor, a scientist, should live and be well. His name is Professor Branaber. And he comes to people, speaks to them. I mean, now he's not well, but when he used to travel a lot all over the world and speak to scientists, and he would tell them that he used to be an atheist, and he didn't believe this, and he didn't believe that. And then he described how he came to believe in Hashem. And as a result of that, these scientists also understand what he's saying, and it affects them to believe in Hashem. But why is it that they're impressed or affected by his words? Because he was an atheist, and because he was a scientist, not because he studied Torah. Because he didn't study Torah, and because he has the same background as them, he was able to elevate them, which means he's using the Avera to bring more godliness into the world. Remember, I told you that there were people who asked the Rebbe after they learned Tanya, and it says that when you eat something that's straight, it stays in your system and it never goes out. So they wrote to the Rebbe, so what happens with the treif that I ate before? I can't get rid of it. Everything else tshuva helps, but the treif stays in there. And the Rebbe answered them, they should try to inspire other Jews to keep kosher. What I explained to them was, it's not just a nice thing to do and it'll compensate a little bit. What the Rebbe is saying is the one way you can transform what you did into Kedusha, because when you tell a person about eating kosher and you describe it, I myself was once like that. I didn't eat this food, I ate those foods, I'd love to go to this restaurant and that restaurant, and I gave it all up. And I'm so happy. That has more of an impact than someone who never did this before. I think I told you this at the time. I was speaking to somebody about the subject, and he said to me, you have no idea what a real bagel tastes like. Not Kingston Avenue. In other words, there's no such thing as a person who never went through it. You can talk and you can have influence, but the strongest influence is someone who made that change in his own life. He can influence other people to make that change. So the fact that I did an Aveira actually serves a good purpose. It helps other people become more from. So I'm elevating whatever happened in the past that was negative. So how do you draw the line? How do you make a difference between something which is an asayan and something which is not kosher? That's the last line on the page. Ma'u hefresh. What is the difference? Beikiyim loisasa, observing and not doing an avera, not eating treif, and a nisayan, the dvar erva. Let's say a nisayan, like the story of David HaMelech, where a person is attracted, a man to a woman to a man, and they have to resist temptation. How do you describe what is the difference between every avera and a nisayan? Isn't every avera like a nisayan? First, I'll give you the answer, and then we'll look inside. So the answer is not every avera is a nisayan. There's certain averas that people observe, but there's no big temptation, and I don't have to resist any kind of temptation. Okay, now do this, now let him do this. There's certain things where a person feels a very strong pull, a very strong urge, and he has to work hard to control himself, and that's when it's in the soul. So it's true. If someone will tell you, yeah, this food, this is a very delicious, tasty, and it's not kosher. You never tasted it before, you're not attracted to it, you don't have any taste for it, and you don't eat it. Even though you observed the mitzvah, you didn't eat something that's straight, but it wasn't in the sign. But what if I'm challenged by eating something which I used to love and I used to enjoy, and I was very, very attached to it, and now I have to let go? That's in the sign. That's the principle. Any avera that there's no emotional connection to it is not in the sign. What? That's not in the sign. But if it's something that I feel pulled to it and have to resist very hard to hold back, that's in the sign. Can I repeat? If the avera is not something that I have a strong desire to do it. Let's say a person is not religious and there's an opportunity to steal money, he doesn't steal the money. Why? Because he's an honest person. It's not in the sign because he wasn't even tempted. He just doesn't steal money. So that's not in the sign. But if someone is that kind of person, there's food there, or it's a man and a woman and it's a relationship and he feels it's strong and he's not allowed to, yes, allowed to, going back and forth, he's fighting with himself, that's in the sign. So any avera which doesn't involve emotional temptation is not in the sign. When there is emotional, it is in the sign. They'll soon give an example. One of the averas in the Torah is you're not allowed to drink blood. Not only people don't have a desire to drink blood, people are repulsed by the blood. So it's not in the sign. But there are other things which could be in the sign. Like the bagel for some people, the pizza for other people, McDonald's for other people. I remember once, I used to give a class in Manhattan, These were women who used to come once a week. They weren't so involved in Yiddishkeit. They wanted to hear a Torah class. But I was talking about the subject of kashrus, and there's a woman there. She said that she really gets it, and she'd love to start keeping kosher, but I can't see how I can live without my mother's vegetables. Okay. Not the biggest tyrants in the world, what? Without her mother's vegetable soup. In other words, this is something so delicious, she can't be without it. So for her, the vegetable soup is in the sun. Other foods are not in the sun. And everybody has different shares. Shleimar, Hine, what's the difference between an Aver that's not in the sun? So he said like this. Ayidei Loises that when a person doesn't do an Avera, I don't eat chametz on Pesach. I don't eat on Yom Kippur. Remember, Loises means I don't do something. Nitche Gimel Klippas Hatmei. Let's turn the page. When I don't do an Avera, I don't transform the Klippa, I just reject it, I push it away. Bimke, Baal Tshuva, a person who does Tshuva, that he transforms in Averas and he turns his life around. He's on a higher level. I mean, this would be like the difference. Imagine you have an enemy that's trying to hurt you. So there's two possibilities. One possibility is that I reject this person. I make sure that he can't get to me, very far away from me, it doesn't bother me. And the other level is where I turn this person around and instead of being an enemy, he becomes one of my friends. That's a leisesa that there's no nisoy, there's no temptation to resist. Which means the person feels pain that he can't have this thing that he wants. So here he is a situation where it's the klipa in him that's pulling him. And therefore he feels it's very hard for him not to do this Avera, but by not listening to the Klippa Sahara and not doing the Avera, he takes out the spark of godliness in it and he transforms it into good. Now, the next few lines are a little bit complicated. I'm going to skip the next few lines. And I'm going to go to the line that starts with the word Hamidos. Can you find that? Somewhere in the middle? Hamidos. Now he's going back to the fifth category. What's the fifth category? When the Nisayan is a person's emunah is being challenged. Something happens and it makes me question Chas v'shalom Hashem, or it could make me question Hashem. Okay, when the Nisayan is about das, about knowledge of Hashem, like it says in reference to a false prophet, comes along a person who performs miracles, does things that are supernatural, and it tries to convince us to do Avodah Zarah. Hashem is testing us. So being that the test is in the realm of understanding and what I'm thinking, so Ikra Biru B'chinas Das, the Toyo Shenofa Gamkem B'Klim B'Zatmeis. So through that we elevate the Das of Klim. That's why it says in this passage, Hashem tests you das, because the test is about das. It's about knowing Hashem. And therefore, when I overcome the test, what does it do? It adds to my das, that my knowledge of Hashem is at a much higher level. By the man, it also says, what was by the man? We mentioned the other day, the man fell from Shemayim every day. And there were people that they were not trusting that tomorrow there'll be food again. The fact, you probably remember the story of Dosan and Aviram. The Moshe Rabbeinu said, don't collect any food on Friday, on Shabbos, because there's going to be a double portion on Friday. That's what we have left in Mishnah. But then there were people who didn't believe. And in fact, the whole idea was, will you believe that tomorrow will be man again? I'll just go off a little bit on a tangent for a second. The Rebbe once asked a question by Fabrengen, and he said he's waiting for us to give an answer. What was the question? The question was like this: what is the difference between a miracle and things that are natural? We know that things that are natural come from Hashem, and miracles come from Hashem. So what's the difference? They both come from Hashem. The sun goes up and the sun goes down, it's from Hashem. A person who's sick and the doctors say there's no way that they could recover. There's no way that this woman could have a baby. And she has a baby, that's also from Hashem. So what's the difference? The difference is when things happen on a regular basis, it's not a miracle. Every day the sun goes up and goes down. It's not because it's not from Hashem, it's just you don't see openly that it's from Hashem. Because it happens every single day. The wind blows, it gets hot, it gets cold. If you drop a glass on the floor, it breaks. It's from Hashem. But you don't see from Hashem because it happens on a daily basis. So the Rebbe asked, if that's the case, why is the month still considered a miracle? It happened every single day for 40 years. It shouldn't be considered a miracle anymore. Maybe the first day was a miracle. The second day was a miracle. But after a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, every day food comes down from Shemayim. Now it should have been considered a teva. Anyone know the answer? Anyone ever hear the answer to this question? No. What? You remember from last year? What was the answer? Remember? Right, but the question is, if it happens every day, it also becomes natural. Okay, it's happening every day.
It's not revealed, so you know that I don't know how to explain it.
The Rebbe would sometimes ask a question. When he asked the question, it was like, wow, such a difficult question. And the answer was like so simple, 2 + 2 equals 4. This is one of the examples. The Rebbe, everybody was like stunned. Wow, this is a question. And it couldn't even be that Rebbe waited a week for people to write their answers. No one had an answer. And the Rebbe gave a smile and gave a very simple answer. What's a simple answer? When the mud was falling down every day, was this in the whole world or only in the desert? Only in the desert. In the rest of the world, people didn't walk outside and get food from Shemayim. So therefore, every single day was still a miraculous thing because it didn't happen anywhere else in the entire world. So there were people that even though the month fell on Sunday, on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, it was still a test that they were worried, we're in the desert, will we have food tomorrow? They announced on the radio there's going to be a storm. People run to the stores and they buy all the food that they can. What's going to happen, And then later they find out there's no storm, they didn't need it. But over here, there were people that wanted to take more food because they weren't sure we'll have food tomorrow. This is the difference between a person who runs a business and a person who works on a salary. They say that a chassid once came to his Rebbe. I don't think it was one of the Chabad Rebbes, but a Hasidic Rebbe. And he asked him, what do you do for parnasa? Where do you get your sustenance from? So he says, I have a job and I get paid every week X amount of money. So the Rebbe says to him, so where do you use your bitachon? You see, when you have a business, every day is a challenge. You don't know how much money you're going to make. Are you going to have customers today? You're not going to have customers today. So every day you have to trust in Hashem that it's going to be okay. But if you know that at the end of the week you get paid your salary, so you don't need bitachon. In the desert, every day they needed bitachon. So it was a test on the das. So when they passed the test, their das of Hashem in the positive became so much stronger. But soon we'll see something very revolutionary that he says here about the Akedah. Let's go a little bit further. This will understand. Madakosha Tuva, a very big question. Madua Yichas HaKosov Nisoyin Akeda Lavrom. How come the Torah associates the Akeda that this was a big test for Avraham Avinu? Wasn't it even a bigger test for Yitzchak? The Zohar answers this question. And he says Yitzchak was then Lamed Zayin Shanim, 37 years old. He was an adult. His father takes him and he asks his father, where are you going? Where's the carbon? And he says, Hashem wants me to shecht you. And Yitzchak says, fine. So who was it a bigger test? For Abraham that's shechting him, or Yitzchak that's allowing himself to be shechted? And we don't even find so much of the emphasis on Yitzchak. It's all about Abraham. Why not? The emphasis should be Yitzchak. He allowed himself to be brought as a carbon. That's the question in the Zohar. There was a very great Hasidic master. His name was Reb Mendel Harada. He was a colleague of the Alter Rebbe. And in fact, the Tzemach Tzedek was writing this Maimer was a name after him. His name was Menachem Mendel. And after the Maggid Mazuch passed away, the Alter Rebbe used to travel to this person as a Rebbe, because he was a senior student of Mazuch Maggid. And in fact, the Alter Rebbe didn't take on complete leadership position until he left and traveled to Israel. He established a community in Israel, in Chevron, and then the Alter Rebbe took on leadership. So this Reb Mendel of Haradaka says the following: Iker hanesayim ba'akeda eina ina v'sirus nefesh. Everyone understands that the reason why the Akeda is such a big test, because here's a father ready to sacrifice his son, and here's Yitzchak ready to sacrifice himself. They said, no, that's not really what the main test was about. Why not? L'gabe aviseinu hakedoshim, our holy fathers, shehein heina markava, they were chariots. Milsa zutrasi, it's a small thing. Avagav the davagadlu b'Yisrael. What he's saying is something incredible. For Avraham Avinu, Hashem will tell Avraham Avinu, like we'll learn in the next week's parsha, Lech lecha mi'atzcha, leave your country, go to another country. Avraham Avinu was so connected to Hashem that whatever Hashem wanted, that's what he did. It was not even he was in such a high level. He and Hashem was one. Whatever Hashem wanted, that's what he did. So if Hashem wanted him to go to Israel, he went to Israel. Hashem wanted him to go to Mitzrayim, he went to Mitzrayim. Hashem wanted him to shech Yitzchak, he shechted Yitzchak. For him, this wasn't a real test. So what was the test? The test was Iker Nesoy Hoya. It was a test of Amunah. Shlo Yihir Avram Achamid Deisav Yisbarach, that he didn't question what Hashem is doing. As Melo Marta, just the other day, Hashem told Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak will be your seed, and he's going to be a father of a great nation, and there'll be hundreds and thousands, and like the stars, that's going to come from Yitzchak. Here, Yitzchak is not. Hashem is changed. It's going to be a father of a great nation. And then he said to him, now take this son that I promised you, be father of a great nation, and before he has any children, take away his life. That's Hashem contradicting himself. I mean, how is it on a regular basis? A person keeps Shabbos, and that week after they kept Shabbos, something goes bad in the business. They're already upset at Hashem. I don't understand Hashem. I kept Shabbos like you told me to do, and now you make me lose money. I gave tzedakah because you told me to give tzedakah, and now I'm losing money. My friend on the same block, he doesn't give any tzedakah and he's making money. He keeps the store open on Shabbos and his business is doing well. So it makes a person have questions and doubt Hashem. So this is the same kind of nisayon. Avraham Avinu, Hashem told him one thing, and then he tells him another thing. So it could question the how Hashem's is being emes. He had no questions, he had no doubts, he did it with all his heart, he trusted everything, and that's what means that he passed the test. That's a test in doubts. So some people ask, so what was he thinking? What was Avraham Avinu thinking? How did he reconcile in his head? The Eibishter told me, bring him as a carbon. The Eibishter told me he's going to be a father in a great nation. How did he work it out in his head? Of course, later he found out it was only a test. But what was he thinking before he knew that was just a test? So there are different mefarshim that give different answers. In the Zohar, it says something very interesting. It says, Avraham Avinu, he knew and understood the world in a different way. What does that mean? So there was a chassid, his name was Rashbatz. He was a very big chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek. And in fact, he was chosen by the Rebbe Maharash that he should teach Chassidus to the Rebbe Rashab when he was a young child. Then the Rebbe Rashab chose him to teach Chassidus to the previous Rebbe when he was a young child. So obviously, if he chose him from all the Chassidim, he was a big Chassid. A lot of stories about his greatness. So this Rashbaz, this person, his name was Shmuel ben Salom. He said, you know what it means that Avraham Avinu knew the world in a different way? We're asking, how did Avraham Avinu explain it in his head? He said, Avraham Avinu didn't even have a question. It's not that he had a question and he needed to look for an answer. He said like this, whatever Hashem says is emes. It doesn't make sense to my brain, so my brain doesn't understand, big deal. But if Hashem said it's emes, how is it going to work out? I don't know, but I know it's going to work out. And that's fully trusting in Hashem. Understanding that Hashem is above my understanding, above my comprehension, and therefore just because I can't understand, that doesn't mean that it's not understood. It's like a scientist would take a telescope and look and say, on the moon, I see this and this. And you're standing there without anything, without any equipment. You look up and you say, I don't see anything. I know what you're talking about. Of course you don't see anything because your eyes can't see even a fraction of what a telescope can see, or even more, sophisticated equipment what it can see. See things higher than the moon. See things on the planets. Incredible what's going on. So basically, if a person understands that Hashem is infinitely, not much, but infinitely greater than me, I have no questions. Whatever he says is emes. The fact that my little teensy brain doesn't understand, no, what else? So now he had a kasha and he gave a teretz. He didn't have a question. And then he had no question in the first place. When Avraham Avinu passed the test, Hashem said, now I know, again, the term das. So this is the fifth category. And in a certain sense, when you're in Golos, that's one of the main tests that they have, is like, what are we doing in Golos? Why is Hashem, we're Hashem's chosen people, Hashem loves us, why are we suffering like this? How come these people could control us, these people could torment us? These people can torture us. So this is the fifth kind of a test. Every one of us has this kind of test in their life. And probably all five tests exist somewhere in our lives, in one way or another. And our avodah is to stand up to the test. And the reason why Hashem does it is not to know. He knows without doing anything. He does it for us, that through this we can reach and rise to a higher level of God. With Eden went out of Mitzrayim, what happened? Moshe Rabbeinu said, you're going out of Golos. And the Eden didn't believe it. That means the test that we had was an Amunah. The same thing now, the Rebbe is telling us we're living at the end of Golus and Mashiach is coming any moment, or whatever you see. And people say, but I don't see it. Look, this happened, that happened. There's a pandemic now. How can you say Mashiach is coming? That means the brain is asking questions I don't understand. And we have to realize, no, this is a test. The Rebbe tells us something, and there's no question that this is emes. It's coming from Hashem, telling us what emes is. And the questions we have to realize that it's only a test. And again, the reason why Hashem gives us this test is not to torture us, but to help us rise to a much higher spiritual plane. Okay, so I want to say now, for halacha, you're going to have a different teacher. I mentioned earlier in the week, Rabbi Azaba will be teaching halacha. Rabbi Azaba was a halacha teacher here for over 20 years. Last year, he had to, couldn't come in the mornings, but this year is coming once a week on Fridays. So not to confuse, he'll be teaching one subject. Rabbi Kasimo on Monday and Tuesday will be teaching a different subject in halacha. And hopefully between both of them, you'll be able to cover a lot of different inyanim in halacha. Okay.